Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Iraqi has warned that his country's armed forces are ready with their fingers on the trigger to respond to any US aggression. He said Iran was willing to enter a new nuclear agreement, but only under conditions of mutual respect. His statement comes a day after Donald Trump warned Iran that it faced new military action if it did not agree to a new agreement on the nuclear program. The US president said he was assembling massive firepower near Iran and that a new attack would be much worse than those the US carried out last year. Joining me now is Niloofar Gholami from DW's Persian service. Good to see you, Niloofar. After promising protesters in Iran that help is on the way, Donald Trump is now mulling his options. From what you're hearing, how hopeful are people in Iran that the US president will deliver on that promise?
Yeah, I've been able to speak with some people inside the country. They're all horrified by this brutal crackdown, but they still have hope for any support. At the same time, they believe and mention it's already a bit late. They say every moment of delay in supporting the Iranian people costs more lives. Many are now deeply worried, for example, for those who've been detained. There are reports of rushed executions and death sentences for protesters. And given the Islamic Republic's record, those fears are completely justified. The fact is, a large number of people in Iran are really counting on global support to help shut down the regime's repressive machinery. What happened in the recent protests was unlike anything we've seen in the more than 4 decades of this regime in power. The scale and brutality are truly unprecedented. Many Iranians expect human rights abuses, the killing of protesters, and the Iranian people's demand for a transition to a democratic government to be at the center of any talks or decision-making.
US sources say Donald Trump wants to create conditions for regime change in Iran and could use military strikes to inspire renewed protests. From what you understand, how hard is it going to be to convince Iranians to essentially risk their lives again?
From the current developments and statements, not just from US officials, but also from Europeans, it is clear that everyone agrees on the need for a change in Iran. But how that change will happen is very complicated, to be honest. In any case, I think Trump intends to address the Iran issue before the end of his term. The question is, with so many actors involved, what will solving the problem actually mean? Will it be like negotiations and another agreement with the regime, or a plan for fundamental changes, or a scenario similar to Venezuela, for example? Any of these depends on so many factors. And what worries opponents of this regime is clearly a Venezuela-like scenario, where, for example, Khamenei is removed, but others from the same system take over the power, keeping the regime in Iran with just some policy changes.
Niloofar, when these people are weighing what to do next in opposition to the regime, how do they assess where we are now? What has changed after that first group of protests and the crackdown?
I mean, so many things has been changed for the Iranian people. For example, I've been talking, as I mentioned, to some people. They are telling that what happened, especially on January 8th and 9th, is truly unimaginable. We know for sure that like thousands killed, the regime's forces were fully prepared for large-scale violence. They came into the streets with a clear intention to kill protesters. A very large number of people were killed by direct gunfire to the head or to their heart. Horrifying videos and images are circulating, including what I've seen, 2 infants, which are deeply disturbing, and some were shot in the head while, for example, their hands were handcuffed. And even doctors are being arrested for treating those people injured. So we know with the internet blackout, the regime is becoming even more violent toward its citizens and violating human rights even more.
Niloofar Gholami from DW's Persian service, thanks so much for your reporting.
Well, I'm joined now by Hussein Banai. He's an associate professor of international studies at Indiana University, Bloomington. He specializes in U.S.-Iran relations. Professor, it's good to have you with us on the program. This massive buildup of military might that we're seeing right now in the Middle East by the United States. Talk to me about the intimidation factor here. Is it scaring the leaders in Tehran, do you think?
No question it is. I think especially it coming on the heels of massive protests in Iran over the course of the last few weeks, but also preceding that, the 12-day war last summer that Israel and the United States participated jointly in. The regime knows that this kind of movement usually is going to have some sort of kinetic outcome. So they are preparing for the worst and no doubt are intimidated, knowing especially that in the past there has been a lot of kind of deceptive strategies around it too. The U.S. might say we're just moving it for defensive reasons, but they have to watch out if there's going to be surprise attacks on the leadership that would decapitate the regime.
It sounds like you think that a U.S. attack on Iran is now imminent, a foregone conclusion. Is that a correct reading?
I think if one were to look at the odds, there's no question that this amount of buildup, it's not just one aircraft carrier, 6 destroyers, a lot of fortification of American military assets in the region, and American allies now increasingly having back-channel talks with Washington or openly talking about it. You cannot build up at this level for it all to not amount to something. So it's almost path-dependent at this point that there will be some sort of action. Now that obviously the big caveat there is that whether the regime in Iran is going to calculate that there might be some sort of exit ramp that could provide the Trump administration. But for now, it surely looks like the odds are in favor of some sort of attack.
We know that officials from Saudi Arabia, that they're in Washington today to discuss possible U.S. strikes on Iran. We know that Riyadh has made it clear that they don't want the U.S. to use their airspace or territory to launch these attacks. That's how it stands right now. How firm do you think their position is, though?
I wouldn't know. I would love to be a fly on the wall in those discussions. It's very clear that in the past, the Arab states, especially Saudi Arabia, have been a lot more cautious because they fear Iranian retaliation against Saudi oil installations, which Iran has done in the past. So I'm sure, there's discussions about those worries, but whether the United States can provide guarantees to Saudis, that's an open question. We don't know. But I get a sense that the flavor of the discussions have probably more of a strategic sense to them than mere, Riyadh sending cautionary notes to Washington.
Mm-hmm. Iran has warned of consequences for U.S. troops in the Middle East. Excuse me. If there is an attack, what would an Iranian retaliation, do we know what that would look like?
Well, the previous templates we've had is that Iran has lobbed missiles near American bases in Qatar. That's certainly a targeting option for the Iranian Revolutionary Guards and their missile program. Another targeting would be oil assets, as I just mentioned, in Saudi Arabia, but also maybe elsewhere as well. There would be an option to attack American military personnel or advisors or assets in Iraq or elsewhere. Embassies have been mentioned by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards of Washington's embassies in various Arab countries might be open for attack. And even though Iran's proxies are severely weakened, we have heard that Hezbollah's current Secretary General has said that they would be activated as well and willing to help Iran, perhaps lob attacks at Israel or Turkey or elsewhere.
But yeah, I was going to ask you about Turkey. Turkey is offering to be a mediator in this showdown. I mean, can the Turks, can they make a difference here?
I'm not sure. They have, by and large, tried to keep this role of the mediator alive, to be the kind of diplomatic channel. I'm not sure if they're entirely reliable to the Iranians because of what happened to Bashar al-Assad when Turkey was signaling to Iranians that, his departure would not be imminent, all the while they were planning for his departure. They're not quite a dependable mediator to the Iranians. And for the U.S. as well, we know that Erdogan would like to keep American military action limited in the region, but we don't know what kind of discussions might take place between him, what kind of incentives offered from the Trump administration to him to change his tone as well.
Professor Hussein Banai, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Good having you with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.